ruffians, villains, traitors! To turn on your own people, take arms against your own king, you will be hanged. Each man of you, I promise you that. Do you hear me? Do you hear? The peasants of Galway are, as they say, revolting. Now, I ask you, surely they have faced strange circumstances, and the stewards of even my own properties have not always been kind or fair to them, but is that just cause for revolution? For treason? There are remedies, legal remedies, many opportunities. Well, they will not hear them. They've got the bit in their teeth now. It's a short road to ruin, just like the French. Just like the Americans. Every day another sovereign empire is torn apart by Well, let them come, I say. They know where I am. They know who I am. Richard St. George, Manser St. George. Richard St. George! I'm not afraid of them. Farmers with rakes and shovels ineptly hammered into iron pikes. Let them come after me if they like. This is no different. This is no different from when the Americans turned traitor, 20 years ago. We should have won that. We would have won that if we hadn't. Well, you've seen my cartoons, I'm sure, yes? Half of England was like that before the Americans and their war macaronis. London in 1772 is fully men bedecked in ribbons and tall wigs, expensive hats, critics, fops, always ready with a word about some or another petty squabble or juicy gossip, but none of them with the wherewithal to draw a sword. I lambasted them in the papers, but to what point? They lambasted each other in the papers, given half a chance. And then the Americans and their revolution. After what? A century of prosperity. Suddenly they chafed at the thought of being part of the great British Empire of liberty, squandering the rights and privileges given to them by their own king, committing treason on a scale never seen in history. Well, I resolved that I would show those same macaronis who pranced up and down the street every afternoon to show off their hats and garters how a real gentleman stood for his king and country. I fought at Brandywine, Paoli, Germantown. By God, I fought them. It's dark in Paoli. I thought my eyes would adjust to the darkness, and they do somewhat, but still. We came upon them in the night, the light infantry first. You race as fast as you can to the fight, wherever the fighting is thickest. That's the kind of soldiering I wanted. I remember seeing plays in Drury Lane before I left to America. Men in bright costume on opposite sides of the stage. The flash and bang of powder, a few swords waved, bloodless bodies on the ground, and it was over. When we first engaged at Brandywine, the battle is nothing like that. It's thunder. A rolling storm of cannon and musket, trees riven, a rain of lead, the noise is everywhere, a scene of dreadful havoc. Here men with muskets open fire upon us. There the ground is cut and furrowed by a cannonball. There again a tree splits. It crashes to the earth beside me. In Paoli, though, there are no cannon. There are no pistols. There's just the bloody business in the dark, bayoneting the rebels. I thrust again and again. There's no cannon. There are few shots fired at all. Only the curses, howling shrieks and groans. It is somehow worse than the thunder of the guns. I'm told we took as many as 500 that night. A bloody business, but well done. This is war, you know. War is melancholy. And what do I have to show for it all? Until the very end, the worst I'd taken was a bloody bruise on my ankle from a musket ball. Was this the only badge of honor I could earn? I aimed to show those macaroni fellows the noble spirit of the fighting man. I had nothing more to show for it than a bruised ankle and a handful of red-soaked bandages. The survivors of Paoli, They call us bloodhounds for our cruelty and vow retaliation, and it comes in Germantown after we've seized their capital, Philadelphia. A fine enough environment. It's not at war, I imagine. The fog is thick in Germantown when the Americans are on us. We hear the guns of the pickets, first sharp cracks hidden from view. We scramble to our lines, but all is disorder, a tumult. Do you know, I thought when I came back to Ireland I would be much admired for the honor that my scars had brought me. That when people saw me, I find that there are days that I can barely stand. I can hardly sleep. I dream about that night in Paoli. Well, could you sleep? Had you seen? At the club, I cannot bring myself to speak to anyone. I just sit by the fire and draw, but the comic scenes seem trivial now, too bitter to think on. And everyone's eyes are on me. Not a hero. Something less, something damaged. They pity me. I had to be carried into Philadelphia, dragged insensate from the battlefield. There is so much darkness around me. We won the day. Though I say we, I did not regain my senses for days, for weeks. I had wanted a mark of my own courage to show off back home, and General Washington obliged me. In the fog, in Germantown, in the chaos, I raised up to rally the men, and crack! The world went dark, and I did not see light again. I wonder if I will ever see light again. The Americans had obliged my courage with a great hole in my head and a silver plate to fill it. The surgeons say I should feel nothing, that there is no sensation around this great hunk of silver that they plugged my skull with, but I feel it still, a presence that never seems to leave, a pressure never quite let out. I have the paintings. An Italian I met after the war, Delegata, I commissioned him for Germantown and Paoli both. I cannot say how I was moved, but there was a need. Like this weight that I still carried to see things right. The officer's sash, the sword, the guns. He had never seen the houses that they build in America, so he just painted the Italian houses that he knew. But the men, I made sure that the men looked right. Germantown looks quite right, for the most part, the important parts. But Paoli feels right. The darkness, the havoc of it. Even now, I find myself drawn down deeper with the thought. Even when I called on my friends, attended the season, brought guests to dinner at my house, I tried to return to the life I left behind, to pick up all the little pieces that had sat fallow during the war. I needed friends again, gentlemen, but also artists and poets. I want people who can understand, whose art is shaped by this same presence I cannot evade, to explain what this darkness inside me is, to give it a voice. Yet here they are around me, sitting at my table, picking at the food that I've provided, nattering on about some trivial scene, looking at me, looking right through me, as if they cannot see the war. Well, by God, I'll make them see. Look, see what I've seen. My uniform is loose, but I still wear it. Do you hear? The guns! Washington is on his way. To arms, men, to arms! Grab your muskets, damn you! Grab your... One time I found my old uniform and chased everyone from the house with a sword. Usually I did much better. But I found that more of my invitations went unanswered. I have the paintings of those battles in my home, and I look at them often. I do not want to forget them. But I do want to forget them. But I do not want to forget them. I am afraid that if I did not know that they were real, if I could not see those battles hanging on my wall, that I would think myself quite mad in the remembrance of them. My friends, my countrymen could not understand, but I could not believe that I was the only one, the only man alive who'd left that war carrying this weight. I traveled throughout Europe after the war, hunting for someone, anyone who I could speak to, or perhaps not speak to, as I still could not quite bring myself to speak of it, not in any sane way. I suppose I was looking for someone who I did not need to speak to, someone who could feel it without words. When I saw Henry Fuseli's painting, The Nightmare, I knew here was someone who understood, who had felt the weight on his chest, the crushing sense of dark. I wrote to him, brought him to my home to work. We tried Brooke Boothby, a gentleman of my acquaintance. He was himself a poet, so used to the vagaries of passion. He was also the only one who still answered my invitations. He and I arranged a pageant. It sounds, I know. We were all in the woods on the estate, and I had brought in actors to be fairies and giants, and Henry would be the wizard who would help to restore the kingdom, like something out of Spencer or Mallory. Not the war, but the way the war could have been, the way the war should have been, a fantasia of evil vanquished, of a sacred realm restored. Well, if it sounds absurd, what of it? The weight that I carried, that Henry and I both carried, was so vast that it seems that no words had the breath to contain it. To speak of it is to be absurd. All of it is absurd, beyond the scope of reason. As much as I thought I understood, something still moved beneath me, something I could not find words for, something vast and undreamt of. I met artists and poets. I wrote to them. I worked with them. I tried to write what I felt, to paint it, to somehow answer that night in Paoli, to release this pressure inside me. But it seemed the havoc of that war would always be with me, like I carried a storm in my soul. When I met Anne, though, all of it seemed to stop. The heavy clouds brushed by a great wind, the sun shining upon me. Europe was still in the great confusion. I suppose I knew it, but I did not care to know it. All I wanted was a respite from all that, the chaos around me, the gloom inside me. And Anne, she... If you've ever been to Llangollen in Wales, it's green. Green like few other places on earth. It's one of the few places that can remind me of Ireland, the sweep of the rolling hills. Anne and I met the ladies, Eleanor and Sarah. They were something of a novelty, you know, two women who had found that there was nothing in the world for them but each other. It was a familiar feeling. I found I quite liked them, however scandalous their lives might be. They were eager to hear about France and Italy, and I have a passable few good stories of Rousseau, the devil take him. He was so clever when I met him, such a prodigious intellect. I wonder what he would think of the monstrous purpose the Jacobins have put his ideas to. The world was still in a tumult, but Anne and I, had found this one green place, still untouched by any of it. A quiet corner sheltered by these ladies who wanted nothing more than to make a home where one had been once denied them. Quiet, still. If a place can be a balm upon one's soul, Llangollen was such a place. For once I feel at ease. Anne is with me, I'm steady on my feet, the air is clean and quiet. I have a portrait painted and keep it like a sacred charm against my heart. When our children are born, I feel the storm quickening again, but like the pain of a limb that has long gone numb, now restored to feeling. My sons. When the Jacobins took the Bastille, I felt a tremor in the earth. That venerable fortress, solid as a mountain, shaking, crumbling. Anne grew ill and died. The King of France was murdered by revolutionaries, and a kingdom that had stood since Charlemagne was drowned in a river of blood. Is there nowhere secure? Is there nothing sacred? Is there nothing that cannot be taken away from me? Anne, The new Republic of France has declared war on us, and I will return to the army. I'll buy a commission, any commission, captain, lieutenant, cornet then, if that's all there is, but let there be no doubt that I am the king's man first. Would she have told me not to? I cannot wear my cap for the uniform, and I feel the eyes are on me again. The pressure from them to match the pressure inside, but I cannot stand by. France has fallen. One by one, the countries around it are overthrown. Do they know what this will mean? To seize their country from the best of them and give it to who? Fishmongers? Millers? Rag pickers? Men who've never led an empire, who can barely provide for themselves. And what will they make of it? Well, just look at the Americans. Still squabbling in the dirt, half of them longing to return to our sovereign embrace. But still, these revolutionaries would turn the world upon itself, fill the streets with blood. Have they seen? Have they killed men in the night? Heard the howling, shrieking, groaning? How can they leave behind the quiet certainty of their homes, their children, their families, as the Americans did, as the French have done? Well, give me my sword, then let me fight. I will not see the world torn apart, not now, not after. It was all still for once. The storm had gone. Why did they bring it back? They would not send me to fight. I went back instead to Ireland to recruit, to tour my estates. And even here, they would overturn the sacred order of the world for what? Over a few cruel landlords? Have we not had cruel masters since time immemorial? There are laws for redress. There are courts. Besides all that, dark times do not last forever. Even cruel masters pass on. No wicked king has seen his evil outlive him. Can it be that this passing difficulty is worth raising up militias, inviting foreign armies to our soil? They have asked the French to help them in their rebellion, begging a foreign country to invade our home. Have we not lost enough? I wrote to Henry. Well, I meant to write to him. I couldn't bring myself to send the letter. I find I cannot sleep anymore without nightmares on the nights that I can sleep at all. I am drawn down once more. I had a painting done of myself, that all this grief should be something real, something that can be seen, not just airy words. I had intended for my portrait and for Anne's portrait, the sacred portrait, to be hidden away, revealed to our sons only when they were old enough to understand, when they needed to know. I wanted to protect my sons from this pain, but I do not see how I can. The world is too much with all of us. I thought I would have more time before they needed to know. The rebels grow bolder by the day. They burn farms, abuse my agents, threaten me. Do they not know? Do they not understand what this will cost them? I have been the length of the aisle to try to put them down, and I would do it again. A few lives lost now to stave off 100, 1,000 more lost later, but nothing deters them. Every man hanged yields 5 more among the rebels. I feel them drawing closer and the world falling apart. My world has fallen apart. You cannot. They cannot want this. Not this. None of them will listen. They have not seen what I have. I've left the portraits up. Anne is gone, and I too will be gone sometime soon or late. But let there be a record that she was here and loved and mourned. Let them come after me if they like. Let me see my wife again. Let them come. I am not afraid.